This is John Paul and Sam Cotler, because I'm talking a lot and I want them to talk. I just want to know if this is true, then I'm going to bring, I'll bring Ben to ask questions after this. But, so this is how I remember the story. So, he gets an interview, but he doesn't know that much, and you've never been out to LA, right? Never been to LA, and all I can think of is I knew one editor who happened to edit the movie I wrote, St. Elmo's Fire, who also edited things like, what, Godfather 2, Apocalypse Now, Jerry Maguire. He just got a Lifetime Achievement Award, Richie Marx. And I also had a cousin who was editing a soap opera. So I said, I reached out to Richie and I reached out to my cousin, and they both could only see John at the same time. And so from what I can remember, and I'll let John tell the story and then ease into the John-Sam relationship. He blew up my cousin, who's still mad, by the way. And he went to John, and because don't smoke, but he was getting a smoke break, and then Richie Marx, well, you can tell what happened there, that's a good story.
Well, yeah, I'd been in LA for the first time, and Carl said, you know, here's Richie Marx's fax number. So I sent him a fax from like Kinko's. And then he wrote me an email and said, come down to Fox, and I came down, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I pretended like I was there to interview him, and then he stopped me and said, you're not a reporter, are you? And I said, no. And he answered all my questions, though, and told me all about editing, and encouraged me, and was very forthcoming, and then last year he got an achievement award. Yeah. I was there.
Like the day before his interview.
Yeah.
Like your first day.
Well, no, that helped me get the internship because...
The next day, that's what you tell me.
Yeah, I went to the American Cinema Editors, which is a wonderful internship. They've been super supportive of fostering new talent. They're not just looking for people that came out of film school. And basically, I said, you know, yesterday I went and met Richie Marx. I said, how do you know Richie Marx? I said, well, I just, you know, read my facts, and they're like, that's what we want, you know. People that are going to reach out to editors, they love Richard Marx, and they gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award last year, and I hadn't seen him since, and I said, congratulations. And he's like, oh, I remember you, and I'm glad to see you're editing now, and he was very nice. Yeah.
Oh. And so, I guess the point of that story and Sam will have his own story, which is, this is not a business where people are going to hold your hand and tell you what to do. There's always opportunities, and the fact that you guys showed up here. And then when I say, oh, by the way, we have an internship, you know, the people who said that 2 weeks ago are now working with Zach Quino and Chris Moore. You guys didn't, and so you need to take advantage of what's in front of you. And no matter who comes back here, whether it's these guys that are representing your life, we really encourage you to. So that said, I will then have the opportunity of talking to you. And I'm very curious with Sam. I can't remember what grade they got on, but I feel guilty over it. I think you both put your screenplay together and it wasn't an A, is that right?
No, I got a B.
Oh, you got a B? Okay, I didn't scar you.
You were generous.
So I'm curious to hear their stories myself. So Ben, you want to come up and ask questions? And
Thank you, Carl.
feel free.
Hey guys, this is actually, I met them like 10 minutes before this thing started. So, what did, when you came to Pitt, what were you expecting to do as a freshman? Did you expect to go into the film industry? Start with you, Sam?
I'd say no. I mean, I came to Pitt having an inclination to be in the entertainment business, but I think I enrolled as a theater major because it was the easiest application, and I had no interest in acting whatsoever, so I don't know why, but I just came here, I knew entertainment was something I wanted to do, but I didn't know what, you know? And freshman year, I think I was much more concerned with moving Beard in and out of Brackenridge Hall than I was, you know, with like a career path. But, you know, as I got into past that freshman year and figuring things out here, I think I started to feel like movies and TV were something that I really wanted to pursue. And it was actually a chance meeting with John Paul in an acting class, of all places. I think he was wearing a bolo tie. Were you wearing a bolo tie? Like a string tie. I think I recall.
I don't even know what that is.
It's like one of those cowboy ties. I recall John Paul wearing a bolo tie. Oh, cowboy hat, right. So John Paul was like this weird guy in this acting class that I got to know, and Yeah, at first. But when he told me he was starting a television station, because that's the point he was at, it just was like light bulb went off, and it all just sort of went from there. And I think a few months later, he had the TV station off the ground with some help from me and some others, and I was directing a terrible sitcom that we aired on UPTV, and I just think it all spiraled from there.
Yeah. The name of the sitcom was a genius sitcom.
It was called The Pitts, which Fox later ripped off. There was a sitcom with puppets in it that aired on Fox, and it was called The Pitts, and I chose not to take legal action, so, you know, but, yeah. Oh, it does?
Yeah, we have in UPTV, we have a picture, a printout picture that says The Pitts, and it says Muppets.
Yeah, that's not my show. That's the Fox show, actually.
Okay.
Our show was like, you know, it's funny because I was taking, you know, classes on Eastern European film and things like that, and learning about the battleship Potemkin. But what I was really interested in was like Seinfeld and Revenge of the Nerds, and you know, and having that opportunity to do a sitcom and do it as stupid as I wanted to do it, you know, and like the sitcoms I grew up watching. You know, we did it, and so it was just, the basis of The Pitts was a dorm housing mix-up where some girls lived with some dorky guys, and they, you know, hilarity ensued for all 4 episodes.
They had to share a bathroom.
Oh, they had to share a bathroom. Right. But, yeah, the Pitts was, I mean, that's you know, as bad as some of that TV was, and I think we can talk more about that. Like, the things we were doing for UPTV were so rudimentary and, you know, basic, but they were really amazing learning experiences. I mean, John Paul taught me how to edit. You know, I'm not an editor, but I know how to use an Avid. You know, I know Final Cut basics, which is always good for everyone to know. But doing that show was the way that I learned to edit, because he would sit with me late into the night in our little, you know, office with no windows over in the communications department, and teach me how to edit my own show. And so, I mean, that show, as bad as it was really the thing, you know. So,
great. And how about you, John Paul? When you first came to Pitt, were you expecting to go into entertainment?
No. I came here to be an astronomy major, actually, and I was really bad at it. Because it involves math, and math is really hard. So, yeah. Well, people have, I just realized I had a visual mind, but it was just basically, I was joking around with my friend one day, Ryan Harvey, who's a friend of mine, and we still actually work together. And he was like, you know, we should make a sitcom or a comedy show, and I said, great. And then basically a light bulb went off, and I was like, well, where could we do that? And we went to, I think there was like a bulletin board station that, I don't know if it's still around, but basically we went there and said, oh, can we put a sitcom on? And they're like, no. And then I kind of came up with the idea, well, why don't we just make our own station? And so the story is basically that I didn't really ever want to pursue anything in that kind of stuff. I just, for some reason, just got really inspired to make this comedy show, which turned into a TV station, and then that took 3 years before it was even on the air, I think, 3 years of like raising money and just going around and trying to get like it integrated into some kind of department, and finding a room, like just getting a room took a year, I think, right? And so by the end of that, I was just like teaching myself how to edit, and I was like, I really like this is cool. And like I actually started a class in the cathedral, like computer labs, like to teach people how to edit, and like that was how we trained everybody for the station, because we had like no teachers, like at all. And so what came out of that basically is we kind of stumbled upon something which is actually really important in film, which is that you really have to learn by doing. And at the time, Pitt was super supportive of us like doing this, and they let us do whatever we wanted. But at the time, the program was focused very much on film studies. And I think Pittsburgh Filmmakers was around, that they were doing like you know, we cutting on 8mm film, Super 8 film, like with tape. And we're like, yeah, but there's these cameras, like we can do this like with FireWire and digital, and they're just like, yeah, that's a fad.
Yeah. No, that was the beginning of digital. You know, digital filmmaking wasn't a thing, and so I don't think Pitt was set up for it, you know, and learning to edit that way seems so unimportant. You know, it was important to learn to assemble a story, but like, you know, the learning to edit digitally has been, you know, an amazing thing. In every opportunity I've had in TV, knowing how to edit and knowing, you know, how to assemble a story has been really valuable. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this. Yeah.
All right, so just to clarify the timeline here, can we just go through like what years you were at Pitt, so everyone else here can be quick?
Well, John Paul was here first. John Paul's 2 years ahead of me, so by the time I met John Paul, he was already pretty far into the process of starting UPTV. But so I came here in 2000, so you were probably here in 1998?
Yeah.
And I took 5 years, so I graduated in 2005. And I mean, UPTV was, you know, and just making things for UPTV, I mean, really occupied most of that time here for me. You know, in the last 3 years of my time at Pitt were all, you know, just cranking out everything I could possibly do. And helping, you know, others from our station, just having my hands in every one of those shows for those 3 years. So that's sort of my timeline.
So like how we, like what the timeline, like how we started it and what we were doing, basically?
Oh, okay.
The
time it took to get
Is this?
From the station sorry.
The time it took to the station. Okay.
Yeah, the time for you guys to like get the idea to.
Okay, yeah. So basically, we had the idea, and then like we had to raise money, and that took a long time. And then the greatest thing I can say about it is like you learn so much, like about producing, just by like learning how to navigate the departments, like meet people, like we created business plans. We had meetings, like Carl said, like we would meet with the heads of departments, and they'd be like, no, like we have no interest in this. And then you go to another department, and the honors college was the people that really believed in us. And they were just like, I know you're gonna end up making dick jokes on TV, but you're gonna learn from it. Like, they were awesome.
And we did.
And we did.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't care what you guys do, I know that you're gonna learn from this, and I think this is great, you guys can shoot it with it. And so, but we needed a department to go through, and we needed space. And John Line at the communications department was the only person that believed in us, that had access to space. And it's funny, I was telling Sam earlier, I actually got a job with the computer labs as like a network, like counting network ports, or what do you call Ethernet ports, so I could go and spy on all the departments and find out who had room. Because people would lie and they'd be like, we don't have any room here, we're full up. And they're like, I happen to know that you have 3 rooms open, because I've been in there. So I was able to go to each one.
That's sort of like navigating bureaucracy around here, I think. And of anything I ever learned at Pitt, that was one of the most valuable things, was like, just like he said, how hard it was to get space and find space. You know, like engaging with this university, you know, deans, when we wanted permission to do things or have an event and needed some money or some help for it. You know, student government, going into student government, and I'm sure Ben and crew are doing.
That's what the real world is like.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you just sign a form.
No, I mean, going and pitching and asking for money and submitting proposals and writing letters and, you know, not taking no for an answer sometimes. I mean, that, and meeting with Carl, you know, being able to pitch to Carl and do the things that, you know, you get to do taking his courses, or just knowing him here is so valuable. You know, he's like a network executive right here at Pitt, you know, it's just having that skill to go into somebody's office and not be intimidated and pitch something, an idea, or...
And they said no a lot. They said no a lot. And then somebody said yes. And then they put us in this tiny closet on the...
We were in
this is the funny part now.
2 years.
We were in a small closet, and there was like 10 people that would try to fit in a room, and we had this like old machine that's called a DPS Velocity, and it connected to a cable that went to a closet somewhere in David Lawrence Hall that put our stuff on the air, and it took how long to upload a show?
Business school. There was some guy who had an office in the business school with our server, and yeah, he hated us.
That hasn't changed.
You still do that?
Wow. Great school.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, by the time I left here, like UPTV was a pretty flourishing machine, and having gone in those to sum up the timeline thing, that span of 4 years from what it was when John Paul had the concept to what it was when I left, and I'm excited to hear more about what you guys are doing and see the progress, because honestly, like, the slide you put up before was impressive. We didn't even have the capability to do a slide like that.
You're like, how's that?
Yeah, it was like we didn't have any capability, so it's pretty cool to see the evolution, and I hope that that's going to continue to progress.
Yeah, when we started, we only had like 3 cameras and 1 computer, and we had to like share computer time, and we really were like MacGyvering together different systems. I mean,
there's a lot of mics taped to the end of sticks that we pull off trees and things. Like it was pretty basic, yeah.
And basically, the basic thing is that what we hit upon eventually is that is how you learn to be a filmmaker, in navigating the bureaucracy, doing things yourself, making the mistakes. You might be making something with bad dick jokes, but eventually you're going to realize what's funny, what's not funny, what's a good story, what's not a good story. And eventually I think you guys ended up getting really good funding after I left, right?
Yeah, student government started to really, fund us and believe in us, but it was that act of being able to pitch what we were doing, was more important than having the ideas for what we were going to put on TV, for sure.
Learning by doing, not just theory, like application is what really teaches.
Oh, great. I always hate having this mic handed to me because it means I say something else.
Next question.
Yeah. That'd be great. All right, so I guess last question from me before I pass it along to you guys and the audience. So after you set up UPTV and graduated, what was the next steps for you guys? What were the next steps?
Well, this is actually really what I wanted to get into today, which is good. So are you guys all film students, or how many people here are actual film students? Okay, and some of you maybe aren't film students but interested in film? Some, yeah? And then how many people are part of the TV station or Pitt in Hollywood, or a lot of people? Okay. So the big question is what do you do when you graduate? How are you going to get into the industry, right? I mean, that's the hard part, which I think I'm really glad that I was able to do a lot of things at Pitt, because yeah, that internship came along. It's great, amazing that Carl knew about that, and they only give out 2 a year, and I was very lucky to get one, and I packed up my life in a week, said goodbye to my girlfriend, moved to California, didn't know one soul, but I knew one thing, I knew I wanted to edit, because when I was here, I really liked editing. I just was really good at it, and I don't know if I was good at it yet, but I knew that I liked it. And so I didn't need to be maybe I should be a production assistant, maybe I should be a writer, maybe I should, I knew. It hit me like lightning, because it's free here. It's free to make mistakes. It's very cheap to shoot something when people are providing you the equipment. It's a lot harder to just go out there and meander around. It's just like college, you take a bunch of courses, you see what you're interested in, you find a major. And so when I got out there, I was very sure I wanted to edit. My personal story is that I got the internship, and it was the best place to be because the people I was working with were the people that were actually making films as editors, and they were able to give me the best advice. And so the second I got out there, they said, look, pretend that you're our friends, we might be, big shot film editors, but that's how you get a job in this industry, is networking, talking to people. Call us up, bug us, don't be ashamed. I mean, don't be creepy, but but it took those really awkward lunches that eventually got me, those awesome jobs where you're working for free in the middle of the night till 6 a.m., which is what you have to do. I worked for free for about, a year before somebody gave me a paying job. But I was just like, you know what, if I'm out here, that's my job, I'm here to work. And I had some money saved up, thank goodness, and I lived in a small apartment and the whole bit. I remember I could buy 1 beer on a Friday night. It's expensive for 1 Budweiser, it's $10. So, I had my Budweiser and I worked really late, and then somebody finally said, one day I was working at this post place, and I would go from door to door and say, if you need any help, and because once the internship is over, they basically are thank you very much, good luck. So I worked at this post place. I stayed there every night. I would work nights, and then I'd go to the movie next door and say, if you need any help, I'm an intern, I'll work for free, I'll get you coffee, whatever you want. And so I got a good job with this guy, Curtis Clayton, who's a very accomplished film editor of Jesse James. he didn't pay me, but he was like, sure, work on my movie. And so I was hanging out with him, and I got a call from this guy who worked next door, and he said, I noticed you're always here. He's like, are you getting paid? I'm like, no. He's like, you're from Pittsburgh, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, great, I got a job for you. And he got me a job at Playboy TV. Which was awesome, because I got to go to the Playboy Mansion, and I worked there for three months. And basically, how did I do at the Playboy Mansion? It's okay. I saw Hugh Hefner. That was cool. I was like 23 and I saw Hugh Hefner. That was amazing. So basically, that allowed me to get union hours, which is very hard to do, which allowed me to get in the union. And then that same guy that I worked for free, Curtis Clayton, I mentioned, was like, what, kid, you're in the union? Come work on my TV show. And then my career started. Because then because the catch-22 is, how do you get credits if you're not getting paid, if you're not in the union? How do you get in the union if you're not getting paid and getting the hours and have the union accreditation? What's the word?
That's right.
Accreditation? Accreditation. People aren't going to hire you for union jobs unless you're in the union, so I use the Playboy thing to get into the union, and then I use my connections with American cinema editors and the internship, which I can't recommend highly enough if you're interested in editing. They give it out once a year, and the secret is, even if you don't get it, you can still go to all the programs. You don't need to be like the official ACE intern. So the best part about it was I met all the people that were editing the films. The secret is, and this is what was told to me, is meet the people that are doing what you want to do. Ask them questions. Don't ask them for a job. Ask them questions. Ask them their personal stories. Learn what they did to get where they are, because it always changes anyway. There's no secret. And those are the people that are going to remember you when a job does open up, when somebody finally keels over and dies. When a job finally does open up. That's the people, I think that's a nice way to put it. They're the people that are going to remember you, right? I mean, what would you say?
No, definitely, absolutely. I guess, well, why don't I go from the top on my sort of journey from here too. I mean, mine's, it's funny because John Paul and I have such different paths and different careers, and the types of projects we're doing are just so opposite ends of the spectrum, but I think our stories are similar in the way that we pursued things after leaving here. So I graduated in 2005, and I didn't have the vision like John Paul to be like, I want to be an editor, I want to be a director. I didn't know still. It turned out I was really prepared to be a producer just from having been here and doing all the different things that we were doing for UPTV, and just scrambling all the time and just figuring things out and problem solving. I realized I was really prepared to be a producer once I learned what a producer does in television, but I didn't know. So I graduated from here, and I moved to New York City, and I got an internship in TV with a company that doesn't exist anymore called Foglight Entertainment. And I was like a development intern. I was, running around the city. I was delivering things to MTV and to A&E Network, and I was, taking notes on the creative meetings. And, they were developing reality shows, and I was learning about the development of reality shows, and helping with the shooting and editing of pilots. So, okay, I didn't want to be an editor, but I was the intern who could stay up all night and edit actually one of my first tasks I ever did. It's funny that we both have stories like this. I was handed a bunch of tapes, and I was told, DV, because we're still shooting on DV tapes, it was going to be a pilot for our Girls Gone Wild TV show, and I would stay up all night and edit, do the rough cut of the Girls Gone Wild TV pilot, and I did it, and at first I was like, I went to college for this, very wide-eyed, of course, but, and then I realized, I was like, no, this is great, like, this is great. I'm learning the total package of how to develop a TV show and where TV comes from. And so I finished with that internship, and they promoted me, so to speak, to PA from intern, which what you'll learn is as some of you start to go out into the industry, whether it be TV or movies or commercials or news or anything, being a PA kind of sucks. Like, it sucks. Being a production assistant is hard work, and it's not glamorous, and it sucks. Being an intern is sometimes kind of cool. You're around the executive producers. You're in the mix, and so sometimes it feels like a step back when you finally get that first real job, but it's not, because everyone, aside from a few exceptions that I know of, starts in the same place. No matter what college you come from or what background you're coming from or academic accomplishment or anything, if you're going to work in any part of this industry, you're going to be a PA at least for a little while. Be it an editing assistant kind of PA or on the set of a show. So I became a post-production assistant on a show called Inked for A&E, which was one of the first reality shows about tattoos. And that meant not seeing daylight for months as I sat there and transcribed footage and did footage searches through the catalog, all the footage they had. It would be, we need a shot of the tattoo artist walking out the door wearing these sunglasses. I would scan for a whole night to find 2 seconds of footage of that tattoo artist. And that job, honestly, it was not a fun job, but here's why it was so great was I was working with the people who were out in the field doing these shows. I didn't know what it meant to be a producer in reality TV, and I'd imagine most of you don't really know it either, because it's a secret, it's not something that you see on TV. If you're doing a good job as a producer, your work doesn't really show so much. But I learned that there was these people who were in the field driving these stories, capturing these stories, doing the interviews. When you see on any show a confessional interview, which every reality show has, there's somebody sitting next to that camera conducting an interview, and I became very intrigued with that as a career. That seemed exciting. These were people a little bit older than me who had just come back from 2 months in Vegas shooting a tattoo show. That sounds great, and so I got to know those producers, and eventually that led to me getting my first associate producer job, which is where you step up from a PA. But in the meantime, I did that was a little later. So after that Inked, I did every job I could in New York. I, had a camera, so I would shoot bands at the Cutting Room and other clubs in New York and get paid a couple bucks for it. I would find transcribing jobs. I would transcribe footage for documentaries or anything. I was lucky enough to have a short job transcribing for a film called Jesus Camp. Has anybody seen Jesus Camp? It was a documentary that actually had it not been for Al Gore's amazing movie, would have won an Oscar that year. But, I absorbed so much from those experiences. I was just watching their tapes and typing everything that was happening. But really what I was watching was how you make a film, how you make a documentary, and I became so interested in that process. So, when the opportunity came, when one of those producers who I'd made friends with in one of those edit bays called me and said, there's a show for HGTV and we need an associate producer, I was like, oh, I've never seen HGTV, but I'm all over that. I wanted to be part of that. And, 8-9 years later, I'm 28 or 27 credits into producing reality TV. And I can say I fell, rear end backwards into it. I never considered that while I was here at Pitt, that wasn't even an option as a career, but it turned out, just from the things that we've been telling you about that we were doing at Pitt, I was so prepared for that when I finally got there. Just from the experiences I had here. And I don't think, I think this place is unique because you can be so hands-on. This isn't USC Film School where you're going to make one thing and there's going to be a lot of pressure on you, and that one thing is what you're going to leave school with. You can leave this place with a really diverse body of work.
You guys are in charge.
You're in charge, and you can really dictate it here. And having done so many different things, once I started, I was like, HGTV, okay, Food Network, all right, I don't know anything about that. I just was able to adapt to everything that came, and I really think it was, this place that set me up for that. Yeah.
Awesome. So are there any questions from the audience about anything you've heard so far? Don't be shy.
We're really thorough.
Yeah, right there.
So, being new, to the industry when you first come out of school, how do you deal with potential failures? Say, you're given an editing job and it just went terribly. How do you deal with something like
What do you mean terribly? It didn't come out, or you didn't have a good time?
It didn't come out. Like, you know,
I
it was boring. It was terrible.
Yeah, that's really hard. It's kind of a gamble to pick, especially because like everybody wants to work on like stuff they think is going to be, you know, successful. So it's hard to get that job, and then the film doesn't come out. And then I've been on, boy, I mean, I've worked with the first film that I was ever assistant editor on. I took 2 years, which was Outcast's Idlewild, and I was like the first assistant. It was like a big opportunity to be the first. If you know what assistant editor is, basically, to be the first assistant takes many years on a studio picture. You don't just walk into that job, and that was like my first. I was like 24, and as first assistant editor, I was like totally stoked. And the film, it came out. Probably some people have seen it, but it totally kind of just got like buried. And they decided it was an urban film, and they only played it in urban places, and they didn't support it. And that was the first time that happened. And then Jesse James, which ended up being a good film eventually, but people forget when that film came out, nobody saw it. In fact, I just went to a screening in New York of it, and they asked the audience how many people had seen it in the theater, and like me and like another person raised their hand. But that one paid off, but we didn't think it would. But get this, after Jesse James, I stopped assistant editing, and I went into editing, and I've cut a lot of films since then for people like Fade Unaway. I've cut several indie features with good casts, and of those films, only one has come out. Which is Killing Them Softly. And now finally, another one. I did 2 this year, and one of them was a surefire bet, and then it didn't come out at all. And the hard part is when it doesn't come out, nobody knows what you've done, nobody's calling you, but you just gotta keep, how do you deal with it was your question, you just keep going, because like, you never know, you know, what's gonna happen. Like nobody thought Jesse James was gonna be a hit. And then now, it's not a hit, but people really like the film. And then Cold in July, I was just telling Sam, I went to New York because honestly, I was just like, I really need to get another film out here. And I didn't think the film was gonna do well at all. I mean, I really like Sam Shepard, and I really like Michael C. Hall. But I thought it was just gonna be like a small little, and it got into Sundance. And it's one of the featured films at Sundance. Like, never thought that would happen. So when you ask like how do you deal with it, I guess you just never really know. You just keep working, but choose. What I would say is you choose what you want to do. This is a very important thing. Choose the area you want to work in. Choose the type of films or type of TV shows or reality, and stick to that. And don't like worry too much. I mean, of course you got to pay the bills. It's a catch-22. And you might have to take loans or whatever, but you should try to stay, that's advice somebody gave me very early on. I'll make a quick story out of it, which was my first, assisting job, or internship job. The place we were working at offered me a job as a tech person, okay? And so that person would fix computers, and I was like, great, I can make some money, this is gonna be awesome. And the editor I was working for said, don't take it. And I was like, why? And he said, well, if you need money, you should take it, but honestly, those guys come in the room, they fix my computer, they walk out. I never talked to them. He's like, they'll never work for me as an assistant. If you want to be my assistant one day, you should keep being an intern. And I was like, okay. And that whole Playboy thing happened, like I talked about. I got a job, and 6 months later, I was working in the same facility as an assistant editor and telling those guys what to do. Not like I knew that would happen. Like I didn't know if I'd end up broke the next week. But I chose film, and I stuck to it, and there's been lots of TV jobs that have come and gone, or other things. I mean, and I was very decisive, even with the failures, that this is what I wanted to do. And it's not easy. I mean, there's a lot of, like, if you're gonna do this, especially if you're gonna work in the most competitive parts of it, you've got to be prepared to fail. And that's a good thing, because you get better every time you fail. That's the way I look at it. I learned something either about how to work with people, or how to tell a better story, or maybe I thought the movie was better than it was and I was fooling myself, whatever it is, you know, whatever your personal tale is. But you've got to be prepared to fail, because it's not easy, and you're going to be stuck in dark rooms with smelly people.
There are a lot of smelly people on television.
A lot of smelly people, I don't know. But, you know, every area has its benefits. No one area is better. It's just what's the right area for you. That's all. It's not that I am actually like a film cinephile. It's just that I really like working on feature films. It's just my thing. And I love documentary too. I wish I could work in that.
I'd love to too. You know, you have to do, and to answer your question, I never fail, ever. No, I fail.
He's the successful.
No, you have to do everything. I mean, I've done terrible television shows that have failed. It's not mine. It's different with me because I'm a producer for hire. I'm a freelancer. I mean, do you guys kind of know what a freelancer means? You know, like I work for maybe 4 production companies a year, all sorts of shows all over the map creatively. Everything. I mean, I've done everything from, Tool Academy on VH1 to Next Food Network star on Food Network, and but there's been so much crap in between that has failed. But every single one of those jobs was valuable in its own way. I mean, I once did and I wasn't, just like he says he's not a filmophile, like I'm not a consumer of much reality TV. But you have to be able to engage that stuff in some way, even if you're not a consumer. I once did a competition show for flower arrangers for the Logo Network. It was called The Arrangement. Okay? It was terrible, unwatchable TV. But I did it, it's the work that you do, and when you get into an industry, if just like he says, you stick to your path. Reality TV is my thing, and that's the work I'm getting, and even now, I mean, this is a couple years later, but even now, I'm not that picky creatively. It's more about the production company that I'm going to work with, who I know there, what do I know about them, the rates, because the rates will fluctuate when you're a freelancer. There's a lot of factors, where you are. I mean, I have friends going off to Alaska every couple months now for months at a time because Alaska's hot on TV. I just spent 8 months in Phoenix, Arizona, doing TV, not being at home, and it's, you have to just weigh all those factors more than if it's a show you want to do, and if you think it will be successful or be a failure.
Yeah, you gotta learn quick. You're not working for a company, right? I mean, you're, like you said, you're a freelancer. You gotta learn quickly to think for yourself and what is best for you. You gotta manage your life. You gotta pay your own bills. I've had to sue people, and you gotta be willing to make choices about what you're gonna do, because it's not, you can do it. I also want to get across the fact that, look at us, I mean, whatever, we were students here and now we're working in the film industry, blah, blah, blah. You can do it. It's possible, but you gotta be prepared. You gotta come hard, right? You gotta come to...
No, it's a very attainable thing if you're prepared.
But you have to make choices about what you want to do.
Compared to some of the people that maybe are coming to talk to you guys here, I don't think our careers are so, foreign or unreachable. I mean, we're working actively in the industry. John Paul hasn't won an Oscar, and I haven't sold the next Duck Dynasty. But we're working every day in those industries where those things are happening. Who's to say I couldn't? And now I'm in a position where, as a producer in the industry, if I had that Duck Dynasty idea, I probably could. But I couldn't have come right out of Pitt with that idea and sold it. You have to just go be one of the soldiers on the ground working in these industries to get to that point where you know the right people and you have the right ideas and you actually know how to go from concept to screen. It's totally attainable, right?
What does a producer do, Zane?
What does a producer do? Or what doesn't a producer do? What do you guys think, like, do you guys have any concept, anybody, of like what producers, specifically in nonfiction like reality TV, do? Anybody?
Money?
What's that?
Money?
Money? No, actually no. I mean, that's common. Like even like relatives of mine will be like, "Oh, you're a producer. You're financing TV shows." No, I never have invested personally in a TV show. I budget TV shows. I budget how to spend a production company or a network's money on a show, but no, not really money. You?
Producers are used to network mostly, finding locations to shoot, getting in touch with people that are necessary for the picture, maybe the best man for the job, whatever. They're very network-oriented people.
Yeah, I would say that's an accurate way to describe it. And in reality TV, every show requires its own set of skills. Like every producer job is different, and it really depends on what the show is creatively. Like, a producer on Cake Boss is not doing the same thing as a challenge producer at Survivor, but that might be the same person. And that's why I keep bringing up being adaptable and like getting different experiences here, because your job would change so much, but you have to be prepared to jump into any show. And okay, I work at Cake Boss, now I'm an expert on fondant and buttercream, and I know what I'm watching, I know how to set it up, I know what supplies are needed. So you're problem solving. Yeah, you're problem solving, and you're also generating content. And that doesn't mean, I know there's this stigma with reality producing that, it's all about putting words in people's mouths, and this person's going to do that to this person, or it's all scripted. That's not what it really is, to create content. Creating content is, Kim Kardashian doesn't decide to go to the supermarket and have some sort of altercation there on her, on her own. Like maybe that's planned. It's not scripted. No one's telling her what to say, but somebody had to clear the supermarket. Somebody had to figure out what employee at the supermarket would be willing to turn the music off. Like there's all these little details that you've never ever considered that it takes to put together any segment or any episode of reality TV, and that's what you become responsible for as the producer. So you're thinking of everything that no one else is thinking of. You're booking locations, like you said. You're booking guests. You're coming up with challenges for challenge shows. Like I've done, a specialty of mine has been competition reality TV. We're talking about things like A Shot at Love with Tila Tequila, and also things like Project Runway, where I spent 4 seasons. And that kind of producing, there's a whole game show element to it too, creating games and challenges, testing them, making sure they're fair because money's on the line, creating that content and knowing that when you shoot it, first of all, everything's going to be dialed in, you're going to have everything lined up and everything's going to be there, but also that picturing in your head that you're going to make compelling TV, like having that foresight, which is so important creatively, to know that you're coming up with ideas for a show that when you actually put the rats in the maze, so to speak, when the cast shows up and they're doing this thing, that it's going to be interesting. And I've definitely had some failures with that, where I've done segments that I started to shoot them and I was like, oh my God, this is not going well, but then I had to problem solve and fix the right moment. So that's what it is to be a producer. You're the last one there. You're the first one there. You're the first one there in the morning. You're the last one to leave.
What time do you go to set?
It depends. I did a shoot on a farm a few months ago for Food Network, milking cows with Bobby Flay and Ann Burrell, and I was there at 3:30 in the morning in New Jersey. To be the first one there. I was herding cows myself into the scene. There's things like you don't have a cow herder on your team, so okay, who's going to be the cow herder? Well, I can't put any of the PAs in that position. I guess it's me. So it's just being.
Want to risk their necks?
No, if someone's going to get hurt, it might as well be me. The cows were very nice, but it's just being able to wear those different hats every day. And yes, the call times are insane, the hours are insane, the commitment is insane. But that's what the job is, yeah. Yeah, any more questions?
Yeah. So when movies make, is it the producer's job to get it to show in a different country? If you wanted to show it in a different country, internationally.
But the question is when a movie's made.
When movies made, is
Yeah.
it the producer's job to get it showing in a different country?
Is it the producer's job? There are producers in film. It's a very it's a Gordian knot of producers, and they all have different roles that they do in TV. But the short answer to it is that there's foreign salespeople, and a lot of times nowadays in the independent movies that actually sell it foreign first, based off the cast, and raise the money that way, and they actually don't have distribution at home at all. So it's actually harder to get the distribution in the U.S. than it would be foreign. In fact, the last indie film I did, they sold it in Germany. They have all these different territories, and different distributors more than producers would be in charge of each. Like there's a guy that's just in charge of Brazil, you know, and you're trying to like wine and dine him, or they are. And so yes, there's a main producer who's usually Big Shot, who's friends with those people, and they get it sold there, and then they use that money to finance the film, almost like a pyramid scheme, selling it before it's together. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the most difficult part to get a movie shown in a different country? Like, is it the financing or?
Do you mean like showing in regular theaters or just a screening or?
Say, for example, like if you want to get a movie, if you think a movie is really good and show in America, and you want it to show in China,
right?
A couple months later, and what would be the problem to get it?
The problem?
The difficulty.
The difficulty. Well, China's a kind of a special case, actually, but basically you would be looking for a foreign sales company, a distributor that specializes in that market, and usually is associated with, I mean, you know, that has a theater chain that wants to pick the movie up and thinks that they can make money off of it. And there are people that just do that job, that take films and try to get them distribution. And people pay those, I forget what they're called, it's like sales agent. People pay the sales agent money just to go around and show the film to distributors. When we go to Sundance, the screening will be filled with domestic distributors who will then bid on the film probably. I don't know, that's not my specialty, but I do know that's how it works. And there'll be guys there from, you know, Uzbekistan. They're like, I think we can make money off this film, you know. And they'll, you know, it's all, that's a whole world, you know, foreign sales. I just work for Myriad Entertainment. That's what they do, just foreign sales. And they just fly all around the world and talk to people. Does that answer your question? Yeah. I mean, the best way if you have your own film is to, I guess, go to a festival. Would be the best way. Try to get into a good festival. Unless you can pay for a foreign sales agent, or sorry, a sales agent that's going to, you know, shop it around town. Yeah.
So you've got a film in Sundance coming up. Like you're flying out if you go on a Friday to go there. Can you tell us a bit more about it, or is that like top secret?
No, it's fine. I don't have any clips of it because I can't really show anything of it right now, but it's not online yet. The trailer, I mean. But it's Michael C. Hall, and it's based off, it's called Cold in July. It's Michael C. Hall from Dexter and Sam Shepard, who I always love, and oh gosh, my brain just went dead. The third person from Miami Vice, Don Johnson. And Don Johnson's awesome. And the three of them are in sort of like an East Texas revenge tale. It's a really unusual movie. Like Sam said, I mean, I think you're kind of approaching, like, based off of your experience, if I can just digress for 1 second, your experience, you know when you're shooting something that it's going to make a good bit, right? From your experience, from what we did here in Pitt, actually, we know, we've tried out all our ideas, we know. I knew when I read this script, it was a really weird script. I mean, it involves some crazy, weird stuff. And this story, unlike most scripts that go Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, they literally start doing, like in the middle of the movie, it takes a left turn and they just start doing something else. And then at the 2/3 of the way movie, they make another right turn. And there's 3 different stories. It's like, it's almost schizophrenic. And I was like, well, I don't think this is going to work when I first read it. And then I was like, wait a minute, let me take another look at this because it's very intriguing. And I realized that it did have the potential to make a good story. I don't want to give away that story, but basically it involves Michael C. Hall and Sam Shepard being enemies and then becoming friends and going out to find Sam Shepard's son, and then discovering that Sam Shepard's son is a terrible criminal and deciding to kill him. We were very surprised. We submitted our first cut, which I think I stayed up till 2:30 in the morning every day for 2 months, 3 months, and we just were like, we don't think we're going to even get in, but here's our first cut. And they called us a week later, and we're like, you're in Sundance. And we're one of the featured films there. Complete surprise. I've had a film in Cannes. I was lucky enough to have that, but I'd never been to Sundance before. And do you want to know anything else about it? I mean,
Like, how does it work entering into the film festival and like being?
How does it work entering into the film festival? You can't actually, it's a kind of a long, Sundance might be a special case, but a lot of film festivals, it's very difficult to get in unless you know somebody, like one of your producers is very tight. Like they have previous relationships with all the people that they submitted with. So to get a film in competition is very difficult, but it's very, I mean, if you're making a good film, anybody can get into a film festival, which is great what Robert Redford has sort of like accomplished, that, you know, you don't need to be a big shot, you can make your own film, and it's sort of democratic. If you have talent, you're going to get recognized. Is it the 90s when Quentin Tarantino, you know, was selling huge films out of festivals with, no. I mean, there's a lot of competition, a lot of film festivals now. I think Pittsburgh should have, I mean, has a fair shot at, you know, doing a good one. I don't know if you guys do have one, actually. Do you?
Well, we have Three Rivers Film.
Three Rivers, I remember that, yeah.
And there's Shot for Shot, just two film festivals.
Oh, cool. I mean, it's a good opportunity to get your stuff seen. How did we get it in? We had good producers, and that's the gamble, is like, is the script good? Do you think these people can sell the film? Because, like I said, I've worked on 3 films that took 2 years, and some of them didn't even come out. And, you know, do they have the connections to get into the festival to do that? And these producers did. They delivered at the end of the day. It's hard. You need to work with good people, and people that are going to get that film out there, and that have the connections to make it happen, you know? Because there's a lot of good films. There's a lot of good films. Maybe our film isn't even as good as a lot of films that were submitted, but they, for some reason, this is what they were looking for this year. You never know. I didn't think it was going to be honest. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on that. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Yes, Nick?
How important do you guys feel like having an eye for material is? Like, do you guys get things and you just instantly know? I mean, you guys have talked about like taking any job you can, which like I'm all on board. But.
How important is having an eye for material?
Yeah.
I think in TV it's different because I do just, it's not that I take every job I can anymore, but I'm not picky creatively, but I know, and I usually don't even think about if a show will be successful. I don't even usually factor that into whether or not I'm going to do it. I think it's much different in the film industry, but I don't really factor that in. But I do think material-wise, as far as content, you have to have an eye for it. Like, you have to know, like I said before, when you're planning things, that material is going to work, you know, on TV. Does that answer your question about TV, or is it more of a film question?
No, I mean, I think you answered it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, you have to know what makes compelling TV. And when you're watching, you know, like I did a show. I did a show once called 24-Hour Restaurant Battle for Food Network, which was a competition where, like, if John Paul and I were 2 buddies who cook, you know, we have this opportunity to create a pop-up restaurant in 24 hours, and if we beat the one on the other side of the wall, you know, which is these 2 right here are opening a restaurant on the other side of the wall, we win $10,000. Well, it was a very exciting show, but sometimes when people are cooking, and they're cooking, and they're cooking, you realize that you don't have anything. You know, you have nothing for TV. I mean, no matter how interesting the person cooking is, whatever dish they're making, it can be the most amazing molecular gastronomy dish ever made, but watching someone cook is bad, you know, it's bad TV. So you have to know, you have to have an eye for content in the way that when that's happening, you have to find something to make it interesting. Something, it doesn't mean going in and pushing their pot over so they're meal fans, but maybe they could make up a rap song when they're cooking. Maybe they could, you know, maybe they could wear a funny hat. Maybe they could do something. Whatever it is, just find something. You have to find something in those moments and make your content better. So you have to have an eye for, in reality TV, it's like knowing my content right now is not good and I have to do something about it. And those are the best producers, are the people that can act on the fly. I mean, we had, you know, one quick story about that. I'll stick with that same show with the restaurant battle. Was we had 2 characters who were brothers, and they were opening up a Greek diner was going to be their thing. And the story is, because you have to know what your character stories are and track them throughout. So, okay, that's what they're doing, but what is the real story? What's the relationship between these brothers? What's interesting about them? You know, why is this going to be a compelling episode? And what I realized was that the younger brother
was really a pushover, and he was very soft, and he, the other brother was it was like Cartman. His older brother was like Cartman. He was this big guy, and he was lean, and he was sweaty, and it was like, he was Cartman. And so I needed a way to have that story come full circle. Like, I needed to have a moment where the little brother would, come out of his shell and have some big stand on that show. Opportunity presented itself, okay? So the restaurant opens, the diners come in, they're all drinking their free Food Network brand wine, which is really not good. But, and things got a little crazy, and there was a girl who had a little too much to drink, and she was getting obnoxious in the pop-up restaurant. She was ruining the shoot, and the production assistants were ready to go in and pull her out and throw her out. I stopped all that, because I knew that was content right there. I brought out the younger brother, and I said, what do you think? She's in your restaurant, she's acting like this. Did I tell him to go do this? No, I just said, what do you think? What do you think about her acting like that? He said, I don't know. Well, what are you going to do? Like, maybe you should do something about it. Like, this is your restaurant, do something about it. That little brother went in 86 this girl himself. And he said, you're out of my restaurant, this is my place. It was his big stand, and it became such a great moment on that show. So, like, knowing, at the time that that some content is available to you, and knowing how to scramble and make it work and get your cameras in place to cover it. Because you're also, when you're a producer in reality TV, a lot of times you're a director too. I just directed a show for the first time as a director, but really I've been directing all along, because you're always, telling cameras where to be, positioning something because something's going to happen, so you have that camera waiting there. It's a lot of thinking ahead. And being able to cover those moments when you find them is really important too. So it's having the eye and then being able to jump on it and get it and make sure it's being captured for television. Anything on that?
Here, watch out here.
Oh, sorry.
Well, that just reminds me of, basically, story is how you... Sorry, the specific original question I want to make sure I answered correctly was, how do you judge? Was it how do you judge a story or a script?
Well, yeah, it seems like there must be projects you guys have,
Oh, yeah, okay. So I'll address that first before I digress then. Basically, I don't know, I just know, if I'm interested in it, I feel like I was very lucky, I kind of feel like, oh, this has potential. I just read a Stephen King story about zombies, people that turn into zombies when they get a call on their cell phone, and I was like, I don't know about this. And everybody's like, it's John Cusack, Samuel L. Jackson. And I was like, I don't want to do it. And I felt like a jerk. And people were like, but I didn't want to do it, And that happened last summer on this other tennis comedy. And then I got Cold in July. And I was like, I like this. At the end of the day, you're never going to be happy no matter what you're working on if you don't like it. And so I've just been very lucky that everything that I have had a chance to choose has been stuff that also pushed me a little bit forward. You know what I mean? And, because at the time that there was the Jesse James, there was also the Night at the Museum opportunity going on. I could have gone and done that, and that's just where my life led me because of who I am, and that's how I think you should lead your own career. So that dovetails into what I guess is unique about what Sam and I do. They're different, but actually very similar in that we are not technical people, actually. We're creatives, even though we're doing sort of a technical job, because both of our focus, what makes, editing is actually not at all about, cutting or any of this bullshit about color correction and, visual effects. That's sometimes editing. It's definitely something you need to know. But it really comes down to, are you interested or are you not interested in this? Are you following this story? Is there enough story in this script? Is this story just a description of something that's going to take about a minute, which is a cooking show description like you just said? Or is this something that can play out? Is there a back and forth? I still think the Pitts is a genius concept that we had and I'm not just saying that because we all came up with it together, because it had this potential for all these different stories. One guy was a nerd and he liked the other roommate. There were archetypes, but there were simple archetypes. The cast filled them out. There was we were working with students and stuff at the time, but we set up the archetypes so that there would be potential for story later on. And so, I still think that was always interesting to me. You know, you had the nerd, and then you had the girl that was pretty popular. I mean, it's a very simple archetype. And he was always bugging her, and that led to a lot of funny situations in our first few scripts. You know, I mean, it's just like how much potential. For me, it's like, do I like the material? And I only recently have been lucky enough to turn things down, you know. But yeah, that's about it. I've noticed it.
No, I think when it's not your own project, you know, like, you know, I aspire to develop and sell my own TV shows and be the executive producer of those shows and have all the creative input. But like when it's not your own project, you're less picky about that content, and it's more about all the other factors around it. You know, I think for me,
yeah. I mean, your jobs are shorter, so I have to be more picky because I could end up doing something for 2 years. So it's not that I'm like stuck up or something, but like I don't want to end up on a bad film for 2 years stuck there, and then the film just because you know once you do that Cusack zombie film, you're just known as the zombie guy. It's true. So anyway, but that basically. No. I don't know. I lost my train of thought on that, but you know, it's been a long night.
Any more questions?
Yeah, what do you guys think about the future of like online distribution? Like movies going straight to Netflix?
well, in television now, I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, Netflix is doing some really cool shows, and they're not into like the nonfiction world where I am so much, I don't think. But it seems to be, you know, I've recently had a few feelers for jobs. You know, I'm meeting with people about next jobs, and I'm starting to hear more like, oh, it's an online series, or oh, you'd be the director of the online component for another series. But I mean, it does seem to be in television really a growing opportunity with online distribution for sure. And also, I mean, you know, if you are somebody coming out of college who wants to make your own show and you know, put it online, like, there's certainly opportunities to do that. And I do hear great stories about great things that happen to people because of that. So I think that's really a great opportunity. What about with film?
I would say this sort of goes back to another one of my mantras. Basically, you can't create the world yourself. Like, you can't like make yourself a success without any help. But online allows you to have the access to get your stuff out to people. That's great. But you're still going to need, you know, to have mentors, have people you've worked with, to like have financing, distributors who really believe in it are going to get it onto Netflix. But I mean, YouTube has proven everybody wrong in the past 10 years. I think you'd be a fool not to put your Pitt projects on YouTube, which I think you've been doing.
So maybe this guy can sell the Pitts International.
Yeah, we can still go back to that show. Should we tell? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.